We now move on to item 5A on the agenda, which is the general debate. Inscription to the general debate was initially announced during the informal briefing on the preparations of the conference on 13th May. An announcement on the general debate was accordingly placed in the UN Journal. The speakers list was open for inscription via the e-delegate portal between 19th May and 2nd June and was closed by 6 p.m. of 2nd June. Colleagues, I would like to draw your kind attention to the rule for speaking time limits. That is 3 minutes for a national statement and 5 minutes for joint statement on behalf of a group of states. And 1 extra minute will be allocated for those speakers with disabilities notified the Secretariat in advance their needs for reasonable accommodation. The rule is anticipated in the guidance note that has been communicated with and agreed already by all delegations by consensus. A copy of this guidance note has been shared broadly well in advance of the opening of the session. Notably, it was shared during Chair's informal briefing on 13th May, and it is also published in both the devoted COSP18 website, which is linked to the UN Journal. The Bureau has tasked President to enforce this rule robustly to manage the time. In my capacity as the President of the conference, I kindly call upon all speakers for your cooperation by strictly observing these rules, especially the speaking time limits. By abiding to the time limit, you will collectively contribute to safeguarding the substantive character of the conference. For this purpose, a technical mechanism is put in place for this meeting. Therefore, all speakers are kindly suggested to try wrapping up your statement before the end of your allocated speaking time limit, or the speaker's microphone will be cut off automatically. As announced earlier, delegations can and are encouraged to avail themselves of the opportunity to post a full text of their statements by emailing to e-statements@un.org. This means all those of you who have prepared for your full text will be shared in its entirety online. Please be assured that the official report of the session will also recognize all written statements submitted and published in the UN Journal under the agenda item General Debate. Finally, in terms of the order of speakers, principle of first come, first served, as well as applicable UN protocols will be respected. This means that all efforts will be made to accommodate those inscribed speakers at the ministerial level or above. Following the long tradition and practice of our conference, and considering the importance of hearing the voices and contributions from stakeholders, especially representative organizations of persons with disabilities, the Bureau agreed that after every 3 state parties spoke, we may invite 1 representative from accredited NGO, 1 UN entity, and 1 national human rights institution to take the floor, and this shall continue in between every 3 member states. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, with this, I would like to recognize the first on my list of speakers and kindly invite Honorable Minister of Culture and Equality of Norway to deliver a joint statement on behalf of UN LGBTI core group for 5 minutes. Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellencies, Chair, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the member states of the UN LGBTI Core Group, an informal cross-regional group established in 2008. The overreaching goal of the UN LGBTI Core Group in New York is to work within the United Nations framework to ensure universal respect for the human rights and fundamental freedoms for all, specifically lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex persons, with a particular focus on protecting from violence and discrimination. LGBTI persons with disabilities often experience multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination, face stigma and suffer violence based on both their sexual orientation or gender identity, as well as their disability. For example, for LGBTI persons with disabilities, schools can be places that are unsafe due to harassment and bullying. Access to health services can be discriminatory, leading individuals to avoid seeking health care, resulting in unmet health needs and greater health risks. Adverse economic outcomes are also more prevalent due to lower earnings, earning less for the same work, underemployment and unemployment. This kind of discrimination often denies LGBTI persons and people with disabilities the opportunities that others enjoy in their daily life. Violence against LGBTI persons with disabilities is an alarming global concern. This violence, which can take various forms including physical, sexual, gender-based, psychological, and economic abuse, is underreported and frequently goes unaddressed by both authorities and societies at large. The compound and persistent stereotypes that persons with disabilities experience in society at large opens them up to experiences, cycles of violence and discrimination, leaving survivors without resources and reinforcing systematic oppression. These are troubling trends, and together we need to make our societies inclusive and safe, to uphold the human rights for all LGBTI persons with disabilities. We must adopt holistic and human rights-based approaches to their health, safety, and well-being. It is important to keep this in mind as we approach the World Social Summit. It is crucial that we work together to ensure the full, equal, and meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities that are also members of the LGBTI community. In conclusion, our commitment to all persons with disabilities, including LGBTI persons with disabilities, is resolute. We call on states to take concrete actions in law, policy and practices to better promote and protect the rights of LGBTI persons with disabilities from the unique threats of discrimination and violence they face every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. Dear colleagues, I now kindly invite Honorable First Lady of Guyana to deliver a statement for 3 minutes.
Chair, Excellencies all, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities remains the gold standard for promoting the rights of persons with disabilities in all aspects of life. In keeping with its obligations under the Convention, Guyana has taken decisive steps to safeguard the rights of persons with disabilities. The Prevention of Discrimination Act and the Persons with Disabilities Act provide the legal foundation to prohibit discrimination in employment, mandate rehabilitation, ensure access to free education and healthcare, and promote participation in cultural and recreational life. The National Commission on Disability is the principal agency for the protection and promotion of these rights. Guyana's low-carbon development strategy reinforces this commitment, and our government backs this with practical support, which includes free healthcare and assistive devices, employment and housing opportunities, inclusion in the school system, and lifelong public assistance for everyone with permanent disabilities. a disability support unit was created to ensure inclusion and no discrimination. Under our One Guyana initiative, youth with disabilities are provided with the tools and resources to pursue economic opportunities. We recently launched the Center for Equity, Opportunity, and Innovation that currently employs scores of persons with disabilities and provide technical, vocational, and business development training. The combined efforts of the Mahaika Learning Lab, the Board of Industrial Training, the Center for Equity, Opportunity, and Innovation, and the Open Doors Vocational Center offers free skills training for persons with disabilities. Guyana is home to the Regional Disability Diagnostic and Treatment Center, which offers early diagnoses for children with disabilities. In the last few years, hundreds of persons with disabilities have received house lots from the government, while the President's Men on a Mission program has built homes and provided construction materials for persons with disabilities. Chair, a society is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable. Guyana is proud of our efforts, as we believe that the most effective way to give true meaning to the convention is through education, empowerment, and engagement. These are the pillars upon which we will continue to build a future where the rights of all persons with disabilities are realized. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. And I now invite Honorable Minister of Rural Development, Social Security, and Community Empowerment of Sri Lanka to deliver a statement.
Mr. President, it is an honor for me to address this esteemed gathering representing Sri Lanka. This occasion holds special significance as Sri Lanka serves as the president of this year's conference, while we continue our steadfast commitment to advancing the rights and dignity of all persons, especially those with disabilities. Mr. President, since rectifying the CRPD in 2016, Sri Lanka has taken continuous steps to align national laws and policies with its principles. We are strengthening institutional mechanisms, raising public awareness, and encouraging meaningful participation of persons with disabilities in all aspects of society. Our government's policy is deeply committed to inclusivity, ensuring that persons with disabilities have equal representation in all areas of public life. Mr. President, I wish to highlight some key areas where progress has been achieved thus far. A new Protection of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act is currently being drafted in line with the principles and obligations of the UN CRPD. A draft bill on sign languages is also underway, recognizing the importance of accessible communication and the rights of persons with hearing impairments. Existing accessibility regulations are being reviewed and new regulations are being drafted. Preparations are underway to collect comprehensive data on persons with disabilities nationwide to enable evidence-based planning, targeted support, and effective policy implementation. The government is reviewing and updating its national disability policy to ensure it reflects contemporary global standards and the evolving needs of persons with disabilities. We are committed to empowering the person with disabilities by providing inclusive support to help them ensure meaningful employment. In line with efforts to promote inclusive access to digital information, the government has issued a circular directing all government institutions to adopt Unicode-compliant fonts across their official website and digital publication. Mr. President, in conclusion, Sri Lanka has reaffirmed its commitment to the full and effective implementation of the CRPD and to the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities. As we strengthen our national policies and frameworks, we believe that a truly inclusive society can only be built through sustained collaboration, mutual respect, and the active participation of all stakeholders, including
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, per decided by the Bureau, I now recognize and invite the representative from International Disability Alliance to make a statement from the designated seat for NGO speakers.
Dear Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, we live in a very challenging times. Persons with disabilities face wars, climate crisis, climate change, and humanitarian crisis, as well as reduced budgeting. We have a legacy of inclusion that we need to keep on protecting. Also, we need to work that diversity and diverse persons with disabilities can achieve their rights equally. We had a very successful Global Disability Summit earlier this year in Berlin, which is very important. And the Amman Berlin Declaration had set a path and guidance forward that we need to follow. That's why I invite every one of you to persist, follow this path, support us, and participate. I want to highlight 3 important points. First is related to development and funding. We should not forget that inclusion requires funding. Without funding, inclusion is impossible. And OPDs must be included from the very beginning in decision-making and in all processes in order to achieve our rights fully. Second point that I would like to emphasize is related to UN 80. It's important that we remember that persons with disabilities, in order to be included, have to follow and protect the inclusion that's already been made, because it's being questioned more and more. Now, also, we are here at the heart of UN, and we want to keep on staying there so that our rights are permanent. Third point that I want to make is related to humanitarian aid. In biggest crises, we are often left behind and excluded, and aid does not reach us in time. OPDs must be involved from the very beginning, not as an afterthought. IDA is working hard to achieve rights of persons with disabilities globally, and this legacy that we have so far must persist and must stay, because that's what impacts our lives, not only persons with disabilities, but the society in whole. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the speaking opportunity to Australian Human Rights Commission. You have the floor.
Thank you, President. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, I make this statement in my capacity as Australia's Disability Discrimination Commissioner and on behalf of the Australian Human Rights Commission, Australia's A-status national human rights institution. Preparations for the Second World Summit of Social Development must be inclusive of all people with disabilities and recognise the principle of intersectionality embedded in the CRPD. Indigenous peoples often experience higher rates of disability due to the well-understood relationship between disability and poverty and the impacts of colonisation. Indigenous communities worldwide must participate in these important dialogues to be affirmed in the richness of their civilisations and cultures. Australia's First Nations people have an important role to play as the oldest known culture in the world, with a history stretching back more than 60,000 years. Interpretive elements of the CRPD highlight that the rights of Indigenous persons with disabilities are a particular concern. The Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Persons gives CRPD obligations a normative framework in that it provides minimum standards to be applied when implementing CRPD rights for Indigenous persons with disability. In this way, the individual and collective rights of Indigenous persons with disability are protected and fulfilled. States parties should recognise and strengthen the active and informed participation of Indigenous persons with disability in decision-making processes through their representative organisations. This is in line with the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities General Comment 7 on CRPD Articles 4.3 and 33.3. The Australian Government has before it a proposal for a National Human Rights Act that would legislate self-determination for persons with disability, First Nations peoples and children, harmonising domestic laws with international treaties. As Commissioner, I eagerly await the Government's response to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. And I now invite Honourable Secretary of State at the Ministry of Family, Labour and Social Policy of Poland to deliver a statement. You have 4 minutes, Excellency.
Dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, let me share a story. It was 2004, a year when I started high school. Until then, I had studied in the place where I was born, a small town in central Poland, where my parents could reach me in 2 minutes to help me. High school was much further away. My parents would leave me there for 7 hours, and it was 25 minutes to get home. I didn't know anyone at the new school. I was terribly scared. I was already in a wheelchair. I didn't know how I would manage without my parents' support. But I did manage. Do you know why? Because of the first lesson of Polish. My teacher said that she believed in me, that she saw my potential. Each of us here is making and implementing policies for persons with disabilities. We are faced with different needs, often without enough resources. I see the implementation of the provisions of the Convention as a sort of evolutionary stage, as all of us as a humanity. The war has been going on Poland's eastern border. This could be our excuse not to concern with the implementation of the Convention and only deal with the security of the state. However, we know that security doesn't exclude humanity. The needs of persons with disabilities don't change due to the more or less peaceful time. That is why we are implementing the Polish Accessibility Act. That is why we are developing digital accessibility. That is why we are just finishing the Personal Assistant Act. I am concerned when I hear of places where for an inclusive society is slowed down or even stopped. This is against principle of solidarity. In Poland, solidarity has a unique meaning. It is a social movement that took down the communist regime in Poland, but above all, a value of which the Polish Pope, John Paul II, said, solidarity is one and the other, never one against the other. We need to do more. Poland currently holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union, referring to Article 8 of the Convention. We have proposed a declaration of the EU member states, declaration of raising awareness of persons with disabilities, the aim of the declaration is to declare regular public campaigns to increase public awareness of the social and professional potential of persons with disabilities. We encourage all state parties to the convention to do similar. Let's think of effective support systems in terms of investment, not cost. I strongly believe that every country becomes a responsible guardian for its most vulnerable citizens. Just like my high school teacher, when she said to me, "I believe in your potential and I will do my best to bring it out." So, ladies and gentlemen, let us believe and do our best. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your statement. And I now invite Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families of Canada to deliver a statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, colleagues, and delegates. It's an honour to represent Canada at this 18th session of the Conference of States Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. As Canada's newly appointed Minister of Jobs and Families, I have the privilege of working alongside persons with disabilities, advocates, and communities to advance inclusion and their priorities. This year marks the 15th anniversary of Canada's ratification of the Convention, a landmark moment that continues to shape our laws. It's guided key milestones from the Accessible Canada Act to our Disability Inclusion Action Plan, our roadmap to a barrier-free Canada by 2040. But plans and policies are not alone enough. Inclusion must be embedded in the daily realities of our schools, our workplaces, our streets, and in our digital spaces. Because the truth is, exclusion doesn't just happen overnight, it happens in the classroom, in a job interview, in a transit system, and in leadership that view diversity and inclusion as a threat to the status quo. This needs to change. Today in Canada, at least 27%, or about 8 million Canadians aged 15 and older, report living with a disability. And in terms of employment rates, it will come as no surprise that there is a gap between persons with disabilities and those without within the workforce. However, this gap decreases when persons with disabilities attain higher education, with employment rates soaring to nearly 80%. While these numbers range across intersections, it's a powerful reminder that opportunity thrives when barriers fall. In fact, countries become stronger and more united when we ensure everyone is included. That's why Canada is investing in tangible solutions developed hand in hand with the disability community, including the new Canada Disability Benefit, our employment strategy for Canadians with disabilities, and strengthening public awareness through initiatives like National Accessibility Week. We're also working to ensure disability rights are protected as society evolves, including in the digital age. Canada has published a national standard on accessible and equitable artificial intelligence to ensure that no one is left behind as technology progresses. And we are committed to reconciliation and justice for Indigenous peoples with disabilities, guided by the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act and its 181 concrete measures. As we look ahead to the Second World Summit for Social Development this November, we carry forward a clear vision, a world where inclusion is not exceptional, it is expected. Because everyday inclusion is not only the measure of a strong and united Canada, it is the foundation of a strong and united world. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement.
Perfect.
I now recognize and invite the representative from International Disability and Development Consortium to make a statement.
Thank you, the Chair. My name is Frederick Oko. I'm speaking on behalf of International Disability and Development Consortium, a network of 36 members from civil society, including NGOs, Organization of Persons with Disability, networks, and individuals. IDDC promotes inclusive international development and humanitarian action with a focus on the full and effective enjoyment of human rights for all persons with disability. The recognition of the role of CSOs and OPDs is at the foundation of democratic processes now more than ever. This role is critical as we face strong headwinds in relation to respecting, promoting, and protecting human rights and closing civil society space. The risk of disability rights within this context is significant, and the specific experience of those facing intersecting discrimination must be prioritized and receive a response. Persons with disabilities are hugely diverse, and even within discussions on disability, some are underrepresented, such as persons with psychosocial disability, dual diagnosis, intellectual disability, persons affected by leprosy, persons with deaf blindness, children with disabilities, and persons with disability living in institutions, hospitals, and other segregated settings. The rights of persons with disability and responsibility of state parties to fulfill them are clearly articulated in the CRPD. The implementation of disability inclusive commitments under global development frameworks such as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its SDGs and Sendai framework are also critical to addressing the inequity experienced by persons with disabilities. OPDs have a key role to play. We must ensure the systemic inclusion of persons with disability and their representative organization in all future agreements. At the 18th Conference of State Parties, we call on state parties to increase efforts to deliver the convention, including by laying the foundation for inclusion for the full enjoyment of human rights, including those innovative financing, measuring and monitoring inclusion and progress, and setting ambitious targets with clear accountability mechanism to ensure the progressive realization of the convention, including by using OECD DAC disability inclusion marker, integrating validated and internationally comparable disability data collection tools into censuses and surveys, and acting on citizen-generated data from OPDs and disability organizations. Ensuring AI is used as a tool for inclusion and not exclusion, and meaningfully including OPDs in consultations. Ensuring the rights of Indigenous people with disability and addressing intersectional discrimination. Ensuring persons with disability and their representative organizations are central and actively involved in decision-making at the planning of World Summit for Social Development and beyond. IDDC, our members and partners, are ready to work with member states in this regard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I now give the speaking opportunity to Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines.
Can I be heard? Good morning. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. We thank you all for inviting the Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines to this forum. We stand proud beside our allies in the National Human Rights Institutes, partner governments, the civil society organizations, and more importantly you, our brothers and sisters who comprise the community of persons with disabilities. Nothing about you without you. We acknowledge that like the rainy weather that has unexpectedly visited our lovely summer here in New York City, the clouds of doubt and distrust in politics and governance are in the horizon. We stand before you and with you today in solidarity, because we can only rise by lifting each other up. Let us also take this opportunity to learn from each other and how we have innovated to weather these challenges. Let me share what we are doing in our country in the Philippines. First, we are trying to build a supportive economy, and we are providing incentives to create infrastructure that encourages independent living by choice. The Magna Carta for disabled persons addresses transportation that is subsidized for persons with disabilities, also providing that 5% employment for organizations and corporations engaged in social development should be for persons with disabilities. Also, private entities that employ persons with disabilities who meet the required skills or qualifications are given the corresponding tax incentives. Under the Magna Carta Act, adequate infrastructure to encourage mobility and independent living by choice are required. The national government shall also provide funds for the provision of architectural or structural features for persons with disabilities. Second, participation in decision-making should be made greater. In the recent elections, you will see that persons with disabilities have been assisted to the polling place. In fact, all polling places have been required to have persons to assist those with disabilities. And third, we need to foster a culture of compassion and acceptance of persons with disabilities. The laws or regulation cannot compensate for what a family can provide or the circle of friends or a community. People will have to be with those who love them to be whole as a mother, a father, a son, or a daughter. In the end, it is relationships that matter. Relationships in which no one is left behind, in which there is universality, inclusivity, and indivisibility, much like the relationships we have here in the Conference of States Parties. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the speaking opportunities to UN Women.
Distinguished Chair and delegates, thank you for the opportunity to address the Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We are living in a challenging time for multilateralism, and this calls for rethinking disability inclusion as well. International cooperation, multi-stakeholder partnership, adequate resourcing and accountability are the key strategies to realizing international commitment and translating them into national priorities. An intersectional approach helps identify hidden structural barrier, stigma, and understanding how individual experiences differ help achieve substantive equality. For example, gender and disability inclusive budgeting can strengthen the alignment of public budget with national commitment to gender equality and disability inclusion. This is critical as we are all speaking about social development summit, poverty reduction, and then poverty reduction attempts must be gender and disability inclusive. In rethinking technology, artificial intelligence, innovation, and transfer of technology in an inclusive future, it is important to note that gaps in access and use between women with disabilities and other women and men with disabilities or without disabilities are quite significant. Based on the United Nations Disability and Development Report 2024 and Global Disability Inclusion Report 2025 that we have launched during the Global Disability Summit in Berlin, fewer women with disabilities, 26%, than men with disabilities, use the internet and own a mobile phone. We are talking about artificial intelligence, but if the access to internet is not available for all women and girls with disabilities, we will not be able to even harness the potential of artificial intelligence. Most women with disabilities do not have access to assistive technology that they need. Hence, UN Women has decided to join the partnership with also AT-Scale and other entities to forge a broader partnership and alliance for assistive technology for women and girls. Women and persons with disabilities are treated as two distinct homogeneous groups, overlooking compounded vulnerability and need for an intersectional approach. A review of almost 44 reports shows and explore how intersectional approach can help identify drivers of exclusion. Distinguished Chair, 2025 also marks the adoption of the United Nations Security Council resolution on the protection of persons with disabilities. As we spoke about conflicts in different places, we also need to be mindful of the challenges that women and girls with disabilities face in a conflict situation. Distinguished Chair, I would end my speech and intervention for UN Women, calling upon everyone to.
Thank you. And I now invite Her Excellency Minister for Equalities from the United Kingdom to deliver a statement.
Thank you, Chair. It is an honour to speak today on behalf of the United Kingdom. The UK is determined to boost opportunity and champion the rights of disabled people. The government works closely with disabled people and their representative organisations, ensuring that the views and voices are at the heart of everything that we do. For instance, we have recently engaged with disabled people through a public consultation and call for evidence for our Equality, Race and Disability Bill. The bill will make the right to equal pay effective for disabled people and ethnic minorities and introduce mandatory disability and ethnicity pay gap reporting for large employers. We have appointed lead ministers for disability who champion the interests of disabled people and disability inclusion and accessibility across their government department. The UK government remains strongly committed to implementing the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We have developed new training to increase knowledge of the Convention across government. We also recently extended the Convention to the British Overseas Territory of Bermuda. Globally, we are faced with a climate and nature crisis and a greater number of conflicts than at any time since 1945. Disabled people are disproportionately affected by these crises, so promoting disability inclusion internationally is more important than ever. This year marks the UN's 80th anniversary. It serves as a reminder that only by acting together can we address global challenges head-on and defend human rights for all. That is why we must build on the momentum of the Global Disability Summit in April. At the summit, the UK announced ambitious commitments to mainstream disability in our international work. This included generating $60 million of investment capital from the private sector and multilateral institutions through the Assistive Technology Growth Fund, integrating disability inclusion in our Green Cities and Infrastructure Centre of Expertise, and ensuring that all our international education programming is disability inclusive. The UK has also announced its co-chairing of the Global Action on Disability network of governments, civil society, foundations, and the private sector, through which we will bring partners together in support of our stronger national and international systems that deliver disability rights, leave no one behind, and
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your statement. And I now invite His Excellency, Minister of Consumer Protection, the fight against social fraud, persons with disabilities, and equal opportunities from Belgium to deliver the statement.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities guides us towards more inclusive societies for persons with disabilities. Yet, in times when we are witnessing a pushback against the values of equality and inclusion, and that the UN system is being put under pressure, it's essential to keep human rights at the center of our actions. This is what Belgium aspires to do. In an increasingly complex world undergoing fundamental changes, additional efforts are needed to ensure that no one is left behind. The overarching theme of this 18th conference is highly relevant in this context. The topics of the Second World Summit for Social Development, poverty, eradication, employment and decent work, and social inclusion are essential to achieve the full inclusion of persons with disabilities in our societies. Mr. President, Belgium recently received the concluding observations of the CRPD committee, following our constructive dialogue in August last year. I would first like to emphasize that Belgium highly values such review processes by independent experts within the UN system. The recommendations came at a highly opportune moment in our political cycle, as we are at the start of a new legislature across all levels of government. The timing is ideal to launch new initiatives and anchor policy choices in line with the committee's recommendations. I'm pleased to share that steps have already been taken to ensure follow-up on the recommendations. We have also held discussions with representative organizations of persons with disabilities to identify potential initiatives for the next 5 years. Yet, continued action is needed to progressively tackle the barriers that persons with disabilities experience in their daily lives, both figuratively and often literally. An important aspect in this regard is that people are aware of their rights and that governments apply the human rights model of disability. More efforts are needed to raise awareness of the UN Convention throughout our country. I plan to work on this in the coming legislature in collaboration with the other levels of government. Belgium reaffirms its strong commitment to the Convention and to building a more inclusive society, together with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations across all levels of policy. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I now invite Her Excellency, Minister of Human Rights and Citizenship.
Mr. Jayanta Jayasuriya, President of the Conference, Excellencies, I affirm Brazil's commitment to democracy, human rights, anti-ableism, inclusion, as well as to the principles of the Convention, the 2030 Agenda, and the SDGs. In Brazil, we have 14.4 million people with disabilities, which is 7.1% of the population, mostly women, Black people, Indigenous people, and the elderly. Our policies focus on breaking away from welfarism and on guaranteeing rights, citizenship, autonomy, participation, and productive inclusion. We have rebuilt the National Plan for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the new Living Without Limits, with an allocation of $1.1 billion in light of international instruments and while fostering federative articulation and the right to participation. Full inclusion requires policies made together with and for people with disabilities. In 2024, we had the 5th National Conference on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which involved more than 1,500 people. We have invested in assistive technology and an appropriate biopsychosocial assessment model. We have a program of reparations for people affected by leprosy, including children who have been separated. Our duty is to guarantee the future, and we invite the states parties to think about leprosy from the perspective of human rights and reparations at a global level. As the host of COP30, we advocate the convergence of inclusion, climate justice, and human rights, and we recognize the disproportionate impact suffered by people with disabilities in extreme weather events and natural disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, we reaffirm, as announced at the Human Rights Council session, the initiative to strengthen international humanitarian law. Brazil advocates a permanent ceasefire, the continued entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and the protection of children, women, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Under the leadership of President Lula, we understand that the convention can only be implemented when there's peace and people's lives are truly impacted by the guarantee of rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now recognize and invite the representative from CBM Global Disability Inclusion to make the statement from the designated seat for NGO speakers.
Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. CBM Global Disability Inclusion puts persons with disabilities at the center of everything we do in support of the CRPD. We are an international development and humanitarian disability organization working towards an inclusive world in which all persons with disabilities enjoy their human rights and achieve their full potential. All of our advocacy, advisory, and programmatic work are done in authentic partnership with OPDs. CBM Global has 4 new strategic priorities: working with those most left behind, ensuring the preconditions for inclusion are in place for persons with disabilities, shifting power in partnerships, and confronting the climate crisis. We are carrying these out in the following ways. Firstly, we are committed to working intentionally with underrepresented groups. We do this by ensuring our country teams and our partners have a greater focus on diversity and on ensuring more involvement of the most marginalised and underrepresented groups in our advocacy and our programmes. Secondly, we are focusing on addressing intersectional discrimination. One approach has been to support OPDs in strengthening data collection, analysis and use. For example, we supported our partner, the World Federation for the Deaf, to carry out deaf-led data collection in Bolivia on the experiences of deaf Indigenous women in accessing health services. This generated critical new data highlighting barriers and gaps that helped to effect policy change. We support innovative financing, especially for OPDs to be integral partners and leaders in the process. In Nepal, funded by Jersey Overseas Aid, CBM partner FIDA brought together civil society, the disability movement, and the private sector. This meant that smallholder farmers from marginalised communities, an OPD run by women with disabilities, and an agri-fintech pioneer collaborated to strengthen the entire food chain and provide farmers with different types of disabilities with collateral-free loans and integrated agri-services. In support of these priorities, at this year's Global Disability Summit, CBM made these 5 commitments: to acknowledge and take concrete measures to adequately resource OPD's grassroots networks and the disability movement, to remove barriers to equal participation of persons with disabilities by utilising and investing in the preconditions for inclusion, to strengthen the OECD disability DAC marker by adopting minimum standards.
Thank you. I now give the speaking opportunity to New Zealand Human Rights Commission.
President, Excellencies, I have the honour of delivering this statement on behalf of the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, GANRI, who represent over 110 national human rights institutions, NHRI, worldwide. All of them support and monitor implementation of the CRPD, and many are specifically designated as independent monitoring mechanisms under Article 33(2) of the CRPD. Across all regions, NHRIs play a key role in promoting the rights of persons with disabilities through their mandates to monitor, advise, raise awareness, and engage with public institutions and society at large. They work in close collaboration with organisations of persons with disabilities, ensuring participation, visibility, and accountability in national policies. This year's overarching theme speaks to a core area of NHRI work. Enhancing public awareness is not only about changing attitudes, it is about building inclusive societies where the rights, contributions, and leadership of persons with disabilities are recognised and fully realised. This requires sustained education, inclusive policy making, and the removal of barriers to full participation. As part of this effort, NHRIs are uniquely placed to address intersectional discrimination, including when linked to gender, age, race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. This includes barriers faced by Indigenous persons with disabilities whose rights and participation must be actively supported. GANRI welcomes the attention to this issue at this year's conference. Last year, the Human Rights Council adopted Resolution 5723, recognising the key role of NHRI in promoting inclusive societies and supporting states to implement the CRPD. This resolution reaffirms the importance of independent, adequately resourced NHRIs and their engagement with persons with disabilities across all aspects of public life. We acknowledge the efforts undertaken by states to recognise and promote the rights of persons with disabilities. We encourage states to build on this progress by strengthening implementation of CRPD compliant legislation and aligning domestic laws with their obligations under the Convention and other international human rights instruments. GANRI and its members worldwide remain strongly committed to working with COSP, the CRPD Committee, OHCHR and OPDs, including of Indigenous persons with disabilities and other partners, to support states and strengthen NHRI capacities. As we look ahead to the Second World Summit for Social Development.
Thank you. I now ask the Secretariat to screen a video message from His Excellency Minister of Family, Solidarity and Community Living of Luxembourg.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the creation of an inclusive society that is adapted to the needs of every person is of concern to all of us. This is why I have the honor to renew to you Luxembourg's firm commitment to the implementation of a national policy which aims to advance the inclusion of persons with disabilities. In Luxembourg, the second National Plan of Action for the implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has just drawn to a close, covering the period of 2017 to 2024. This plan focused on important areas such as accessibility, inclusive education, self-determination, the participation in social life and access to services to everyone. Today, this plan is being reviewed. That's an essential step to pinpoint the measures that have hit the mark and to see where we need to do better. At the same time, Luxembourg is looking toward the future, preparing for the development of a third plan of action. And here, once more, it is clear to the government of Luxembourg that this cannot be done without the persons concerned. Discussions with persons with disabilities and their organizations is at the heart of the process. Their voices, their lived experiences, and their ideas are the driving force of this new plan. The priorities include two salient points. First, deinstitutionalization to guarantee to everyone the right to live independently with full inclusion in the community, as stipulated by Article 19 of the Convention. And second, professional inclusion, because work is a vector for independence and social recognition, and Article 27 will guide our efforts in this area. Participatory workshops have been established in order to prepare this new plan. And here, again, Luxembourg wants to do things right. The workshops will be accessible to everyone, taking into account the specific communication needs and the multilingual reality of our country. We should hail the progress that we've made up until now. Many reforms have been launched and projects have been started thanks to strong cooperation among ministries, administrations, communes, and above all, civil society organizations. This cooperation is the key to success. Indeed, inclusion cannot be imposed top-down. It needs to be crafted together on the ground, day by day. Yes, there's a long path to travel, but we will travel that path together for a society where everyone has a place of their own, no exceptions. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement. I request the Secretariat to screen a video message from His Excellency Minister of Social Development from State of Palestine.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I stood before you a year ago to deliver a message of urgency. Today, I returned bearing heavier truth. We have lost a lot. Imagine, as a person living in Gaza for the last 19 months, no food, no water, no medicine, no school, no university, no hospital, no shelter. A battle that's still continuing until this moment. The people with disabilities in Gaza, as well as the north part of West Bank, they are in an extreme inflicted situation because of the relentless Israeli war machine that has now raised. These relations include killing, destruction, displacement, especially the ongoing breach of the Geneva Conventions, Article 11 of the People with Disability, the UN Resolution 2475, which emphasizes the inclusion of persons with disabilities in humanitarian responses. The continuing war has drastically increased injury. The disability rates increased in my country. Most of the people injured in Gaza are becoming disabled people, especially women and children. First, we issued a decreed law to publish the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities at the beginning of 2024 and continuing until this year by providing permanent cash assistance to people with disabilities. This included around 20,000 people, procured care and rehabilitation services for 39 civil society organizations as representing the social protection network in my country. We also financed around 100 economic and empowerment projects for people with disabilities in West Bank. And hopefully soon we will start in Gaza and we have start to build Gaza again. The State of Palestine stands ready to work closely with all partners to formulate a comprehensive international plan for rebuilding and rehabilitating disability centers and ensuring provision of essential care, rehabilitation services, and devices. In conclusion, persons with disabilities in Palestine are not seeking privileges. They are demanding their inalienable rights to live, to move, to be treated, and to be protected, just like any human being in the world. Not as statistics and reports, but as dignified lives, because every life matters. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement. And I now invite Excellency Minister for Disabilities from Italy to deliver a statement.
Thank you, dear President and distinguished delegates. I'm very honored to be here with all of you again. Today I have 3 points to highlight to work from now and for the future. First, we can invest in the value of each person. I'm convinced that this is the right way, investing as the institution and as the private sector to promote the talents and skills of everybody, and above all, leave no one behind. Second, the first G7 of Inclusion and Disability with its final document, Sofagnano Charter, was a great opportunity to enhance the valorization and to have a new vision. And this is a new fight for every country in the world, for all of us to move with responsibility and go on. That's why I want to thank the South African Minister, Ms. Chikunga, for her commitment to host the first G20 Ministerial Forum on Disability, and Italy will be there. Third, it's time to pay attention to every point that concerns persons, to change perspective and to reverse priorities, in particular in relation to children and adolescents. Nothing is possible, nothing is necessary if we don't take care of persons. My dear colleagues, dear all of you, I'm convinced that we must be present at every meeting, at every level, to talk about valorization, to talk about universal accessibility, to talk about technologies and artificial intelligence, to talk about sports and recreational life, to talk about protection in case of humanitarian crisis, climate change, and conflicts, because all of this concerns people. I have a last point. This is about media. Media must communicate more and more about the wonderful work that persons with disabilities do every day, about caregivers, about families, about associations, about potential, about great projects and good practices. And media must help us to communicate better with the right language and right perspective. We must do it together for the social development of every country. We are all in the same world, and we all have a great responsibility to act now. I want to conclude by saying that history is made by heroes. History talks about people who want to change things, people who are convinced that nothing is impossible, people who use their strength to serve others, people who are exhausted but do not give up, people who never give up. This is the beginning of our history, a common history we must continue.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now recognize and invite the representative from Inclusion Canada to make a statement from the designated seat for NGO speakers.
Distinguished delegates, Inclusion Canada champions the full inclusion and human rights of people with an intellectual disability and their families. We believe in something simple: equal value, full participation, unwavering dignity, even when it's unpopular, especially when it's unpopular. Every day, individuals and families fight for inclusion, but why so many barriers? Why does progress feel like pushing a boulder uphill only to watch it roll back down? Today in Canada, we're caught in a frustrating cycle, and it's time we named it. The UN's directives to Canada are clear. Repeal Track 2 medical assistance in dying, stop sanctioning death based on disability, close your institutions, honor Article 12, let people decide. These aren't suggestions, they are international human rights obligations. Yet Canada, a nation capable of true human rights leadership, hasn't always lived up to these obligations, but we know it can. Meanwhile, we fight. In Nova Scotia, families won their human rights case. After decades of no, Nova Scotia's Court of Appeal said yes. Deinstitutionalization is finally on its way, with families helping design the solutions. But watch what happens next. We win a landmark deinstitutionalization victory in one province, and another announces 200 segregated classrooms. They call it specialized support. We call it what it is: segregation. We close large institutions, and new tiny home villages pop up, clustering people with disabilities on the edge of town. They call it innovative housing. Too often, it's just segregation with a new name. We demand real poverty relief, and Canada delivers a disability benefit of $200 a month, with rules so restrictive most won't see it. They call it historic, we call it inadequate. Do you see the pattern? Ableism doesn't die, it just rebrands. New labels, same exclusion. But here's what they don't understand. Every betrayal only strengthens our resolve. Every segregated classroom creates new advocates. Every broken promise proves why we can't stop. To Canadian families watching, your exhaustion is real. Your fight matters, and your loved ones deserve so much better. To governments reinventing segregation, we see through your new labels. Rights aren't gifts you give when you feel generous. They're not favors we should be grateful for. Rights are not negotiable. The beauty of rights is you claim them through sheer, unrelenting persistence until they are respected. Canada must honor its commitments or face our unwavering resistance. We have courage, we have the convention, we have each other, and we're not going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the speaking opportunities to UNOPS.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pascal Bielefeld, and I'm CEO of AT-Scale, the Global Partnership for Assistive Technology, an initiative hosted by UNOPS. Assistive technology is addressed in multiple articles in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, advocating the promotion of research, development, production, availability, and appropriate use of assistive technology. And yet, so far, the world has failed to meet the global need for assistive technology, particularly in low-income countries where only 10% of people have the assistive technology they need. This gap is caused by multiple and persisting barriers, including lack of financing to purchase assistive products and numerous inefficiencies in the marketplace. Another bottleneck is the lack of coordination among ministries, which translates into a lack of coordinated national response, leading to a fragmented and under-resourced sector. In recent years, AT-Scale has begun to make significant investments in countries where we seek to drive sustainable system change to increase national capacity to procure and provide assistive technology. We're also advancing multiple market-shaping initiatives. Last year, we launched the first Assistive Product Market Report, which provides greater visibility and transparency into the most dynamic assistive product markets. And next month, we will launch the second report, which takes a crucial step forward by focusing on the demand side of market dynamics. It delves into the significant unmet need for AT in low and middle income countries, analyzes the complexities of supply chain costs, and examines the role, in particular, of China's supplier landscape. These reports are valuable resources for policymakers and suppliers seeking to gain a deeper understanding of assistive product markets, needs, and offer actionable strategies to improve access and improve collaboration. Yesterday, here at COSP, we launched a policy brief on assistive technology and employment in partnership with the ILO, which highlights the crucial role of AT in expanding employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. We're committed to continuing to raise awareness of this critical issue. On June 4th, we celebrated the second World Day for Assistive Technology, which has had a huge uptake. And there's also a resolution that has been tabled at the UN General Assembly on assistive technology, which we hope will be adopted this year. We're already working with many member states, and we thank you for your support. And I call on all of you today to do more. Join the movement and become a partner of AT Scale. The world needs this. Millions of people need this. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative from League of Arab States to deliver a statement.
Mr. President, the Arab region has met with unprecedented challenges that have prevented the region from implementing programs for persons with disabilities due to the aggression of Israel against Palestine and Lebanon. There's a need to free there's an unprecedented aggression against persons with disabilities. And it is impossible to ensure their needs given the blockade that was imposed, a blockade to humanitarian action. The League of Arab States asks for immediate stepping up of medical and humanitarian aid for persons with disabilities in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in the occupied Palestinian territories. The League reaffirms the importance of upholding IHL and international human rights law. At the regional level, the League of Arab States has stepped up its efforts to promote the interests and the rights of the persons with disabilities and there's also a summit in Saudi Arabia announcing the second decade of persons with disabilities for a certain period. This is a very important step in this area, aiming to foster the development integration of persons with disabilities and to ensure their social integration in line with their needs. So as to leave no one behind. Therefore, the League of Arab States welcomes its ongoing cooperation with the United Nations, both at the regional level and at headquarters. This in order to implement plans and initiatives in the context of the second decade of action, and leveraging as well technology, including AI and its applications, as well as the second Social Development Summit being held in Doha. This is also of major importance. The League of Arab States reaffirms the importance of the process for preparing for the summit, ensuring the rights of disabilities in all areas. And there will be a declaration stemming from that summit. There's a need to integrate persons with disabilities into all strategies and policies. In closing, the League of Arab States reiterates the importance of strengthening cooperation and cooperation with all entities and with all international organizations to put in place the provisions of the convention and also to deliver on the SDGs nationally and internationally. The microphone has been cut off.
Thank you. I now ask Secretariat to screen a video message from Her Excellency Minister for Inclusion and the Voluntary Sector of Malta.
President, Malta aligns itself with the statements delivered by the European Union and UN LGBTI core group. In recent years, we have emphasized the importance of ensuring that persons with disabilities are fully included in all relevant processes, guided by the principle of nothing about us without us. However, as we progress through 2025, we are deeply concerned that this principle is being eroded. Instead, we are witnessing an alarming shift towards nothing about us. A populist wave worldwide has led to an increasing marginalization of minorities and vulnerable groups. Among those most at risk are women and girls with disabilities who often face multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination. Their experiences must be fully acknowledged and addressed in all policy efforts. Malta has always firmly believed that empowerment is the key towards reducing discrimination and fostering social cohesion. By removing barriers to participation, we empower persons with disabilities to be able to fully share their contributions to social development. For awareness to increase, we cannot merely speak about rights. We must also illustrate what implementing those rights leads to in practice. Key to empowerment is the right to make one's own decisions. Malta is proud to have recently launched a public consultation on its personal autonomy bill, which will make supported decision-making the rule under our law. This complements ongoing work on the institutionalization. To reach this goal, we are pressing ahead with our ongoing reform to widen access to the right to personal assistance and introduce a system of personal budgets to support independent living. We are proud to have harnessed new technologies as part of this process, further exploring how to use AI to increase community services. We also led and participated in multi-country projects such as Activate, which sets up an autistic advocacy school concept, and Digital for All. We also committed to making our official development assistance more disability inclusive at the last Global Disability Summit. Nationally, we are changing the narrative by repealing legislation discriminatory to persons affected by leprosy. We also continue to offer training led by persons with disabilities, covering specific areas such as inclusion in employment. Critically, we are continuously working on collecting better, disaggregated data and reforming disability assessment models, making more people eligible for support. Malta believes in framing and considering persons with disabilities as equal players in society. Malta did not just implement measures for persons with disabilities, but made sure that such measures were developed with and led by persons with disabilities. Empowering people to contribute to social development is a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I ask Secretary to screen a video message from Minister of Labour, Family, Social Affairs and Equal Opportunities of Slovenia.
Dear Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be able to speak to you on behalf of Republic of Slovenia. As a Slovenian minister, I must say that I'm mostly proud on two systems that our state has developed to help and include people with disabilities. The first one is widely accessible system of personal assistance, and the second is our employment system that is based on quota. Both are helping out thousands and thousands of people with disabilities to be included into society. And both systems are the pillars on which our policy rests and is giving an exceptional results that are among the best in Europe. But today I want to speak about another campaign that we are running. It is a public awareness campaign, because I firmly believe that inclusion starts with public awareness. We have to first understand the problem, be aware about it, so we can solve it. National Council of Disability Organizations is running a project that is supported both by Slovenian state and the European Union that is trying to penetrate every pore of the society. Schools, kindergartens, together we are running different art projects as we are trying to train people with disabilities to speak up, to share their experience. Part of the project, of course, is also this dissemination of the awareness of the benefits that the European Disability Card brings. It is giving people with disabilities many opportunities to improve their inclusion into society. We are also putting a special attention to women and children with disabilities because they are often facing multiple and intertwined phases of discrimination that we want to get rid of. All of those activities, of course, have one goal, which is we want to build a society where no one is left behind.
Thank you. And I now invite the representative from Women Enabled International to make a statement from the designated seat for NGO speakers.
Your Excellencies, this statement is delivered by 13 organizations. States continue to fall short in upholding the rights at intersection of gender and disability. Nearly 20 years since CRPD, 30 years since Beijing Platform, and almost 40 years since CEDAW, human rights violation against women and girls and gender diverse people with disabilities remain persist. This comes aimed to growing global backlash against human rights, gender equality, and racial equality that is impacting persons with disabilities who face multiple and intersecting forms of marginalization. At the same time, our work as feminist-led organization of persons with disabilities is increasingly difficult as funding for the work becomes scarce. Also, we are extremely worried about the security of women with disabilities in Palestine, as well as in many other sites of conflict and worldwide. Women and girls and gender diverse people with disabilities are still largely invisible in policy, funding, and decision-making level, and disproportionately impacted by denial of legal capacity. This invisibility has to end. Thus, we welcome recent effort to guide a state of ensure rights and the intersections of gender, disability, and others. These include the CRPD Committee upcoming general commitment on the rights to participate in political and public life and guidelines on diverse women and girls with disabilities. We also applaud the African Union February adoption of a new convention on ending violence against women and girls, a landmarking instrument with explicit protections for diverse women and girls with disabilities. Likewise, we welcome the CEDAW Committee General Recommendations number 39, which especially address the rights of Indigenous women and girls with disabilities to protect from violence. Regarding funding, we echo the Global Disability Summit call 15% of global funding for the 15% of the world's population of people with disabilities. But let us clear, this commitment will mean little of the 15% continues to ignore the diversity within our.
Thank you. May I now invite Excellency Minister of Community Development and Social Services of Zambia to deliver the statement.
Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Zambia is honored to participate in this important session of the Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We commend the Secretariat and all stakeholders for facilitating this vital platform for dialogue, accountability, and progress. This year's theme is both timely and essential as it highlights our shared responsibility to ensure that persons with disabilities are fully included and empowered to contribute meaningful to sustainable development. Chairperson, Zambia acknowledges that awareness raising, policy reform, and decentralization are critical enablers for the advancement of the rights of persons with disabilities. In this regard, notable progress has been made. Government recently adopted a national policy on persons with disability aligned with the CRPD
to promote well-being, inclusion, and empowerment across all sectors. Complementing this, the National Social Protection Policy, based on a life cycle approach, ensures comprehensive support for persons with disability from early life through old age. Additionally, the National Disability Mainstreaming Guidelines are promoting disability inclusion at all levels, while efforts to strengthen disaggregated data collection are enhancing evidence-based decision-making. Chairperson, despite the progress made, some challenges persist, including limited capacity at local level, inadequate resources, and negative societal attitudes. In response, Zambia is strengthening institutional coordination, investing in local capacity building, and prioritizing the full and meaningful participation of persons with disability in all stages of policy design and implementation. To conclude, Zambia remains optimistic about strengthening partnership, technical assistance, and sharing the best practices to promote inclusion. Government reaffirms its commitment to promoting the empowerment of persons with disabilities and ensuring their full participation as active agents of change in building a just, equitable, and sustainable future for all. I thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now invite Excellency Minister of Economic and Social Inclusion of Ecuador to deliver the statement.
Buenos días.
Good afternoon. I bring warm greetings from the State of Ecuador and also from the Constitutional President of the Republic of Ecuador, Mr. Daniel Noboa-Zin. I hail the presence of delegations of various member states of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The State of Ecuador guarantees fulfillment and full validity for exercise of the rights of persons with disabilities contained in international human rights instruments, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and national regulations in relation to disability. Under this framework, Ecuador upholds an abiding commitment to comply with the recommendations of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities through coordination of actions with public and private institutions as well as with civil society organizations for the implementation and mainstreaming of public policy on disabilities. In this way, work on inclusion never stops. We are firmly moving towards the optimization of services that address the realities of persons with disabilities. For this reason, we promote their professionalization, we recognize the profound value of ancestral knowledge, and we defend education as the vital power that sustains progress over time. We believe with total conviction that an inclusive country is only possible in a society that is continuously raising awareness about disability and about human rights. We seek democratic participation of all, not only in elections, but also in crafting the necessary policies, because being a part of the future of the country is not a privilege, it is a right. Ecuador continues to advance inclusion through various strategies that strengthen autonomy. They promote active participation and generate opportunities for all persons with disabilities. We are committed to fair and sustainable development, and we know that this path is not one that is travelled individually. For this reason, we emphasize the importance of coordinated work across institutions at all levels of government and also of international cooperation. Working together will allow us to develop countries with hope of becoming just societies where each person, whatever their condition or circumstances, can live in dignity, exercise their rights, and play a leading role in writing their own narrative. Finally, I wish to emphasize that our country introduced the National Strategy for Persons with Disabilities for the period 2025 through 2029, focused on strengthening and developing the productive field, employment through also entrepreneurship of persons with disabilities, promoting skills and competencies through cutting-edge technological and AI tools in order to leave no one behind. I thank you.
Thank you. I now invite Excellency Minister of Social Affairs, Family and Childhood Affairs from Kuwait to deliver the statement.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. السلام عليكم.
Thank you. May God's peace be with you. First of all, the State of Kuwait is delighted to be participating in this very important annual conference. This reflects our tireless commitment to persons with disabilities and their full and complete participation in all areas of society through the use, for instance, of artificial intelligence and other technological tools. President Kuwait will continue its efforts nationally and internationally in order to provide services to persons with disabilities. This has allowed us to make significant strides. We, for instance, signed the Amman-Berlin Declaration from the Summit on Disabilities. We have employment and employability policies for persons with disabilities in the public sector and also in the private sector. And we are committed to respecting all of the provisions on persons with disabilities in terms of accessibility to all public buildings. We have a high-level committee that is continuing to monitor implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and we also have a national convention to ensure that the human rights of persons with disabilities are fully respected, and we do so in collaboration with institutions of civil society. And we have a guiding plan through 2027, and we are working together with other stakeholders to implement optimal reforms in this regard. There is a national program for sign language and also other training programs for persons with disabilities. We've also provided training to some 400 people, 63% of whom work in both the public and private sectors. We reaffirm the importance of equal opportunities. In this regard, we have adopted principles to ensure socioeconomic and educational programs and integration policies to cover persons with disabilities in all sectors. And we once again reaffirm that we are going to continue working together with a range of bodies, including the United Nations and civil society, to ensure that the societies that we craft allow all to live in dignity and to participate in our development. I thank you.
Excellency, I now recognize and invite the representative from Global Disability Innovation Hub to make a statement.
Thank you. My name is Ian McKinnon, the CEO of the Global Disability Innovation Hub, known as GDI Hub, based in the United Kingdom. When we set up GDI Hub back in 2016, we quickly adopted a mission: innovation for a fairer world. It seemed obvious that a different approach to the intractable challenges around disability inclusion and social justice was needed, and we wanted to help drive that agenda forward. In the decade since we launched, powered by developments in technology and the methodology we learned working on the London 2012 Paralympic Games, we have worked hard to fulfill that idea, reaching millions of people in tens of countries with hundreds of partners producing new research, new enterprises, and new approaches. But now we face a problem, or two to be precise. One, bringing technology to bear on global challenges is now mainstream, and two, disability inclusion is still not. Add a global political and economic paradigm shift, and it's time to go back to first principles. COSP this year is different. So much has changed. We need to question the assumptions we've been working with and never questioned before about the way the world is organised and the way the institutions that run it operate. Whether we like it or not, the global consensus is blown apart. Governments in the global south and north are more indebted than ever, and redoubled security efforts at home take precedence over aid abroad. The obvious need to do more on social justice and climate justice and just plain fairness is clearer than ever, because the same people are facing the same dire outcomes, with systems set up to ensure that many of those people are persons with disabilities. So everything has changed, but then nothing has changed at all. The need for action on justice is greater than ever. So what now? Well, GDI Hub still want to pursue the outcomes we always stood for: inclusion, a fairer world, new and better ways of doing things with absolute and renewed vigour, because the outcomes haven't changed. If you are black or brown, queer, not male, disabled, older, a migrant, or from a poor background, you are more likely to have less good outcomes than most other people, whether that is access to education, health, work, or simply happiness. So at COSP this year, GDI Hub commits to 4 key things. 1, redouble our research efforts and smash our boundaries to ask the hardest questions. We will use the time, money, resources and efforts we have to dive into the evidence and the really hard stuff. We'll seek co-conspirators and will bring to bear our knowledge, our lived experience and our ideas for what's next. Number 2, we can't do any of this on behalf of other people. The further decision-making gets away from the people who experience the sharp end of things, the less innovative, creative and helpful the solution.
Thank you. I now invite Excellency Secretary of State from Democratic Republic of Congo to deliver the statement.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has made great strides in implementation of the International Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Since the arrival of President Chilombo to power, the country has organized the governance of the disability sector by creating a ministry tasked with persons with disabilities, and we have established administrations across all provinces, and we have 2,000 civil servants in the country who have disabilities. And we have encouraged them to move up through the ranks. We have a national policy for the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities. The DRC emphasizes in particular implementation of Resolution 2475 for persons suffering from disabilities as a result of war, given that we have been struck by war for many years. The DRC calls for peace around the world and greater financing from multilateral powers in the sector of disabilities. I thank you.
Thank you. And as the final speaker for the pre-lunch session, may I now invite Excellency Minister of Social Development of Bahrain to deliver the statement.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, delegates, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is both an honor and a profound privilege to address you today and to discuss a principle that lies at the heart of our shared humanity: leave no one behind. This is not merely a slogan, it is a guiding light for our policies, a driving force behind our initiatives, and a fundamental pillar of Bahrain's vision for an inclusive and equitable society. Under this principle, the Kingdom of Bahrain, under the wise leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, the King of the Kingdom of Bahrain, and with the directives of the government headed by His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, places the empowerment of people with disabilities at the core of national priorities through an integrated system of supportive policies and initiatives. The resilience and perseverance of persons with disabilities in overcoming challenges inspire us daily, and it is our duty to match their determination with an ecosystem that fosters their growth, dignity, and full participation in society. Bahrain's commitment to persons with disabilities is firmly enshrined in Law Number 74 of 2006 regarding the care, rehabilitation, and employment of persons with disabilities, which ensures their care, protection, and access to opportunities that enable meaningful participation in all aspects of life. Furthermore, by ratifying the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities under Law Number 22 of 2011, Bahrain reinforced its pledge to uphold their rights on a global stage. Legislations alone are not enough. Since 2012, Bahrain has implemented the National Strategy for People with Disabilities and then developed an executive plan to continue the national efforts through close collaboration with government entities and civil society. Today, the Kingdom of Bahrain is honored to preside over the current 44th session of the Council of Arab Ministers of Social Affairs. Within this framework, the Council emphasizes the importance of advancing and explicitly upholding the rights of people with disabilities through collaborative efforts under a unified framework. In Bahrain, we believe in the power of unity and live by the ethos of Team Bahrain. rooted in shared responsibility and collective action. The empowerment of persons with disabilities is not a parallel track, it is an integral part of our national progress. Achieving this vision demands national solidarity and active global partnerships. We are committed to building a future where no one is left behind, where every individual, regardless of ability, can contribute, thrive, and help shape a more inclusive world. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are close to the end of this meeting. This afternoon at 3 p.m., we shall continue the same agenda item 5A in order to hear the remainder of the speakers of the general debate. A copy of the updated list of speakers will be available before 3 p.m. I would kindly request all delegations and would appreciate your full cooperation by arriving at the venue and taking your seats in advance around 2:50 p.m. this afternoon so that collectively we can assure our meeting will be able to start at 3 p.m. and proceed as per the schedule. With this, I declare that the first meeting is concluded.